events that happened yesterday in Naivasha. Remember, Senator Paul Njoroge is to be charged with the misuse of his firearm, and we will be having a conversation in a few minutes over the increasing incidents of misuse of licensed firearms. All right, so let's just do that right now here in studio. Joining me is George Musamali. He is a security expert. Thank you so much for joining us, George.
Thank you.
So let's talk about this incident yesterday with the Senator Paul Njoroge. I'd like to hear from a securities expert perspective. What did you think of that?
I think that was very reckless of him and dangerous also. And this is not the first time we're seeing these kind of things happening in this country.
Right.
Remember, we had Professor Obel. He did the same thing. He shot a Matatu driver. We had the owner of a Legend.
Yes.
He shot a patron in the club. And all these are licensed firearms holders. Quite recently, we had a businessman, Chris Obure. He also had the same issue.
Right.
And we've heard the government always promising to take action against such people. But so far, nothing has happened. And I think very soon we're going to have people losing their lives over reckless misuse of firearms by people that are supposed to know better when handling them.
I'd like to hear your thoughts about that particular incident. I mean, the way he was handling his gun, from your perspective, I mean, what message really does it? Because it was very reckless of him. I mean, you would expect that maybe the bodyguards would come in and sort of restrict him from using it.
I think this brings to question about the quality of people that we give these VIPs as close protection officers. Because in normal practice, standards as usual, you're supposed to understand your subject, you're supposed to understand his behaviors. And in this case, personally, I've interacted with Honorable Njoroge, and I find him to be a very hot-tempered person. And this is something that the close protection officers are supposed to know. And it's them that are supposed to have advised the chief firearm licensing officer that we are dealing with a hot-tempered person, very temperamental, and we don't believe that he is suitable to hold a firearm. And therefore, it's the responsibility of the chief firearm licensing officer to withdraw or to cancel the license of Honorable Njoroge. So I believe that we also need to have people who are qualified dealing with VIPs.
And what essentially should have happened in that situation yesterday? Would the bodyguards have come in to... What is the ideal situation?
That is obvious. The ideal situation is that the bodyguards should have come in and disarmed the MP and then made a report, an official report to Naivasha police station that we have had this incident, and they should record the statements as to exactly what happened. And this did not happen, and this is why I'm saying that we should have qualified people being assigned to VIPs as bodyguards, not just any other person that is picked from the streets. I mean, they should have known better, and even the body language of the VIP showed clearly that he was about to draw his arm. And this is when they should have come in and stopped him from doing that. But they let it happen.
They let it happen. Yeah. Let's talk about the process of getting a firearm. I mean, it is supposed to be a tedious one, but you know, time and time again, we're seeing very many people now having licenses to own firearms. I mean, how is that process? Is it an easy process? If you have money, is it very obvious that you'd get a license?
It's not an easy process, Betty. And this is in the Parliamentary Act, Chapter 114 of the laws of Kenya. It spells out the process that somebody is supposed to go through before being issued with the firearms. And it starts from you filling in forms and then handing them over to your local OCS.
Okay.
The OCS will acknowledge receipt of the same. And then we have the County Security Committee that is supposed to sit down and vet you. And basically, the composition of the County Security Committee includes even people from the intelligence, people from the DCI, we have the provincial administration. They'll vet this person, and on the need to be, if there's any need for this person, because in the forms you must state clearly why you feel it's necessary for you to be issued with a firearm holding license. And if they find it fit that actually the circumstances are there for you to be issued, then they will approve this and forward the forms to the chief's firearm licensing officer, who will go ahead and issue you that license. But before you get to that point, they must make sure that you are properly trained on how to use this firearm. And there are certain kinds of firearms that cannot be issued to members of the public, to the civilians. And you'll find that in Kenya right now, I have looked through the process, and it came from the police themselves. The chief's firearm licensing officer, Mr. Kimaru, sometimes last year said that they were going to vet, because they believe that we have so many people that hold firearm licenses that are not supposed to have them. They were given in underdog ways. And this is when they were disarming Mombasa Governor Joho in Mombasa. And what he promised has not come out to light. So far, nothing has been done. And the way I look at it, I've looked at the profile of the people that are misusing these firearms. These are the who is who in Kenya.
All right.
And basically, it means that as opposed to being a defensive weapon, we've turned guns to a symbol of status. You buy a car, the same way now you can buy a gun, not being given on merit. That's the problem.
Are you saying that this process has been sort of infiltrated with serious gaps?
It has been abused. Let's use the word abused, because as I've said, there's a process, a thorough vetting process that's supposed to be done. And there must be a need. That need has to be identified by the vetting team.
All right.
And once it has been identified, they will either accept your application or reject it. But now, as it's happening, if you have money, people are buying these licenses.
And is it obvious
through the back door?
Yeah, through the back door. And is it obvious, I mean, looking at this picture of the senator, is it really obvious that because you're a VIP, because you hold political office, it's obvious that you should have a firearm? It's
not obvious, Betty.
Okay.
And I've said that in the standard procedures, they must do a threat assessment on you.
Okay.
And if you're issued a firearm today, the renewal is supposed to be after 1 year. And after this 1 year, if the circumstances that led to you being issued the firearm do no longer exist, then the OCS is supposed to recommend to the chief licensing officer that revoke this license, because this person, the threat that we identified last year, are no longer there. They do not exist. And remember, the rule is that we should have very few firearms in the hands of the members of the public, because it's the responsibility of the national government to provide security. This is why firearms in civilian arms is discouraged, Betty.
Let's talk about the processes that will follow after yesterday's incident with the senator. What action are we expecting to be taken?
This is a VIP, Betty, and we are not living in mass. We are in Kenya. I don't expect anything to happen. And remember,
oh, really?
In fact, even most of the cases that we've seen going to court, they're still pending. The legend businessman is still out on bond, and the bond is always very minimal. Yes. Somebody is given like 10,000 shillings cash bond by the courts and is out.
That's nothing really.
Yeah, and if you look at the case of Chris Obure, he had a previous gun withdrawn by the police, but still, this other incident, he had another gun. Where did he get this gun from? Okay. And the rules are you cannot be issued with more than one firearm for self-defense. Okay. So, I mean, this process has been abused. And what Kimaru promised should be done now urgently.
But you're saying that this, because it's a VIP, probably will be taken around in circles and nothing will happen.
That's normal in Kenya. We've never seen anything happen.
That's quite unfortunate. But then ideally...
And probably somebody's trying to justify this because he's saying that he was being attacked by a mob of youth, which is something that cannot be proved. It's neither here nor there, because there are justifiable circumstances when you're supposed to use your firearm. Where there are justifiable circumstances in this case, I don't think so.
All right. And he had his bodyguards anyway.
And he had his bodyguards anyway. They are supposed to provide protection to him.
To protect him. But then ideally, in an ideal situation, minus the VIP aspect of this, what ideally should happen after such an incident?
The normal thing is that the person is supposed to be arrested, the firearm confiscated by the police, investigations done, and if he's found to have unjustifiably used the firearm, then he's supposed to be charged in court with the offense of the misuse of the licensed firearm.
All right.
And basically, the license is supposed to be revoked immediately. That is the process.
All right. Let's talk about the conditions under which people are given firearms. Were these conditions at some point reviewed?
They've never been reviewed. They're still the same.
The same from
the last review we had was in 2014. And this was only...
Was it a serious review?
It was not a serious review because initially there was this issue of misuse of the firearms. And then we felt like, okay, let's review this and make it a little bit hard for people to be getting these firearms. But still, as I've said, corruption is coming in. We're still getting these licenses through the back door. And this is what we need to look at. Why are we having people that are not justifiably issued with firearms, having them in the first place? Let's do this audit that Kimaru promised us, and let's remove firearms in the hands of people that do not need them.
All right. Well, from a security expert point of view, George, once you draw your gun, I mean, should it be that easy? Because, I mean, just looking at that video that is playing, it's really worrying. That he would just draw the gun, it's like he would bring a biro pen.
The rule, Betty, is don't draw your gun unless you're threatened. Otherwise, you're inviting the threat.
Oh, okay.
I would hate to imagine if the other team also had people who had firearms.
Okay.
And they would have justifiably said that the moment we realized this man was drawing his firearm, we knew we were being threatened.
Okay.
And automatically we took action and by shooting him. I mean, I would hate to imagine such a scenario. And because Mheshimiwa did that, definitely he was inviting the threat to himself, to his person, and his bodyguards and the people around him.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, George. Very interesting views there from George.